Hi skiers, I'm Jeff from skiessentials.com. Welcome to episode 8 of Top 5 Fridays. This is our weekly video series, or what has always been a weekly article and now is also a weekly video series recapping the top 5 news topics from the ski industry of the week. Thanks to everyone for joining me over these past few weeks here in my basement. Hopefully we won't do too many more of these from the basement studio. But we're still just, following local Vermont guidelines here, and just being as safe as we can. So still shooting these from home. Right now I'm not complaining because we're back to like crazy hot weather here in Vermont, and it's pretty nice and cool down in the basement. So I'm perfectly okay to be down here and talk about skiing. And let's get right into it. It's been a tough week in the country for all of us, I think. Without getting into specifics, there's obviously a lot going on right now. And number one news topic of the week this week is specifically how the ski industry and how the outdoor industry has been reacting to what we'll just call a week of kind of racial unrest. And specifically, I want to talk about a letter that Rob Katz, the CEO of Vail Resorts, a letter that he wrote to his employees, which I thought was really interesting. And I thought it was a very well-written letter. I think he did a really good job. I think it was important for them to communicate a message. Vail Resorts is a huge company. I used to work for them. And something that they do really, really well is communicate to their employees on certain things, especially, and they're actually pretty open and transparent for such a big company, especially on stuff like this. So I just want to read a quote from Rob Katz. This was a ways into his letter, and I encourage anybody to go read the letter. As always, I'll leave a link to it. But here's the quote. "I'm also confronted by the fact that our company and our sport are overwhelmingly white with incredibly low representation from people of color." And I think that is something that just raises an interesting question. And ironically enough, this week we started basically a series of kind of like staff profile highlights that we're going to release through social media. I was the first one that we did. And one of the questions was, what are your wishes, or something like, what are your wishes for the future of skiing? And I basically said I want it to be more accessible for a broader range of people. There are tons of economic barriers of entry and cultural barriers of entry, to the sport of skiing. And I would love to see it just be more inclusive in general. And I think that's a difficult question to answer. Another quote from Rob's letter is, "Candidly, I'm not sure I fully know what the solution is." And I don't think anybody really does, but I think it's what better time to have conversations like that than right now. So if you guys have any ideas, leave them in the comments. I thought it would be a fun, maybe not fun, but be a constructive way to take the current news and use it as, try and pull a positive out of it as best as we can. And I think that's a good way to do that. My thoughts are, kind of in a situation like that, or just across the board in terms of lowering barriers of entry to skiing, I really like the increase of indoor ski areas. I think we're going to see more and more of those popping up in urban areas, but that's just certainly not a solution to the problem. It might be part of a solution, but yeah, I think it'd be really cool if the sport of skiing was more accessible for a wide range of people. So it'd be great if we could start a little conversation in the comment section with some ideas of how we could do that. Next up, we have some summer camp updates. So Unofficial Networks and Peak News Magazine, they both reported on this. Whistler has announced that they will not be open for summer skiing or riding. We've been following this for a while now, and I don't think it's too surprising, especially because we've seen similar decisions made from similar resorts, or at least resorts in similar situations. So here in Vermont recently, well, I guess it's been a few weeks now, probably, but Killington announced that they would not be reopening for skiing, but would be reopening for mountain biking. And Whistler is basically doing the same thing. A quote here from John Smart, the Momentum Ski Camps director. He basically said, "It's devastating all around, but I can't say I'm totally surprised." And I think that's probably the attitude of everybody that was waiting with anticipation of whether Whistler would open or not. But it really makes sense when you think about it. Part of the reasoning here for Killington not reopening is it would basically be the only place to go skiing on the entire East Coast, which had the potential of just bringing too many people to Killington, which is a relatively small town. And you could say the same about Whistler, and the other side of that is there are plenty of places, or will be plenty of places, to go mountain biking this summer. So for them to open their summer operations, it's going to be easier for them to kind of control the environment and ensure a safe experience for everybody that's visiting. So it's kind of a bummer, but I don't think anyone was really surprised that Whistler decided to made that decision. On a more positive note, we touched on this, I believe, last week, but Timberline is getting closer and closer to inviting camps back. It seems like it's happening momentarily or any day now. And they're basically, they're looking at basically three factors: is terrain, capacity, and social distancing. And they're looking at all of those variables and trying to figure out how they can allow for camps and how to do it in the safest way possible. Oregon is still, they're not allowing overnight camps still. So as of now, all of those camps will be day camps. But if you follow the links in this video, you can read more about it. But pretty much camps were already kind of positioning to be day camps instead of overnight camps. So it seems like that's going to be able to happen. Parents are basically encouraged to travel with their kids as opposed to just sending them off and letting them do their own thing. Basically just a little bit more supervision there, a little bit more organization to kind of ensure proper social distancing. So that's cool. Hopefully summer camps will be up in full swing in Mount Hood. Pretty awesome scene out there, so I'm glad that kids are going to be able to get out and train. This is similar, along the same lines. This is something that you're probably all aware of. It's been in the news a lot recently, or at least over the past month or so. And this really isn't breaking news. It's more telling a story, and specifically telling the story in Aspen. But basically, the idea of this article, and this is through Colorado Sun, is that antibody testing, which was once seen as like this home run grand slam for ski resorts, is now really looking more like a swing and a miss, so to speak. Basically, it's become, since those tests were implemented, it's become more, or we know more about those tests. There have been more. Basically, we know that they don't necessarily work as well as we thought they did. There's up to, I think this article reported that there was up to 16% false positives. So really interesting article. I would encourage you to go and read the whole thing, because I'm not going to do a great job summarizing the entire story. Pretty interesting, but basically the summary of it is that instead of this solution and this way of kind of guiding the reopening, it really just caused more confusion and more unrest than anything else. So really interesting story. If you want to read more about it and kind of what decisions it caused, then definitely encourage you to do so. And then this last one's pretty cool. Little Cottonwood Canyon is going to receive 12 new remote avalanche control towers. Sorry, I can barely read my own handwriting. But this is really cool. It's basically, this story came through in just a series of Instagram posts, so there's not a tremendous amount of detail about it out there, But this is all being done by the Utah Department of Transportation. They're WISN Avalanche Control Towers. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that company name right, so forgive me if I'm not. But really interesting. You can actually go and read quite a bit about the towers themselves, what makes them better than existing towers. They basically require a little bit less ground maintenance, so a little bit less frequently does somebody have to go out and kind of maintain the tower itself. And yeah, pretty cool. And hopefully this will make things a little bit safer out there. It'll almost certainly cause or allow for less road closures, which I think is going to be good. But basically, the Utah Department of Transportation is asking locals for now to avoid those work areas as best as they can, and even just use general caution if you're traveling in that area. So take a look at the Instagram posts. You can see the specific map of where they're going in. So definitely do that if you live in that area, just so you can see maybe where you should steer clear of for the next few months. That project's supposed to be done by this coming September 2020. And that's it for news topics. Then we have our edits of the week. Number one is a short film called Originate. This was a collaboration through Red Bull and Michelle Parker. Hard to go wrong with those two names. Michelle Parker is a phenomenal skier. It's been really interesting to watch her career develop, and she's turned into one of the premier female backcountry skiers in the world. And basically this short film kind of revisits some of her steepest, gnarliest lines of her career. It's about 15 minutes long. Really, really good watch. I was able to watch most of it before coming down to film. Number two edit of the week is from Marcus Etter. It's called First Day Out, and it's basically the story of their first trip back into the mountains after COVID-19 limitations or restrictions were lifted. There's some really cool cinematography in this. There's also some really cool, just kind of selfie filmed Marcus talking in his tent footage. And I'll say most notably, I think it's at about 1 minute and 55 seconds into the video, one of the coolest drone shots I've ever seen. And that pilot must be pretty talented. And the people that he filmed must have been comfortable with a drone flying right next to them or underneath them. So check that out, even if just to see that drone shot. Third out of the week, this is from Outside TV. It's going through the story of a group of women, basically a variety of different women from the ski industry, some pro skiers, some just industry people. They were on an expedition from Greenland to Iceland. And during that trip is when the real big news about coronavirus and COVID-19 hit. And they were, if I remember correctly, they were literally sailing in between Iceland and Greenland, and Greenland shut down their borders. So they had to turn around, and they had to make a lot of decisions just on the fly. Flights were getting shut down, international flights were getting shut down all over the place. So pretty interesting story. Pretty interesting video. The first half of it is more just kind of about the trip, and then halfway through kind of the news breaks about COVID-19. And then last edit of the week is from Jesper Theater. This guy's crazy. Hopefully you've seen some of his edits before. He's the guy behind Unrealistic and a few other just mind-blowing ski edits out there. But this one's pretty cool. He basically did a trick that was inspired by the video game SSX Tricky. Superbly unrealistic game if you've ever played it. Basically the character can take his skis off midair and spin them around and do all sorts of crazy stuff. But Jesper basically does that. Looks like his binding probably wasn't clicked in when he went off the lip. Takes his ski off, throws it out in front of him, and then puts it back on and lands and clicks in as he's landing. So pretty cool. There's also a follow cam shot of a Bio 9 mute that's just it's just a pleasure to watch. So that's later in the edit. And if you don't like watching Bio 9 mutes as much as I do, my apologies, but that was a really cool trick and just filmed and performed really well. And that's it. Thanks for joining us for Top 5 Fridays. We'll see you next week, of course. Yesterday we started a rollerblade skate to ski video series. So if you're interested in rollerblading and doing some skiing cross training this summer, check that out, and we'll talk to you later. Thank you.